I walked in and found my wife holding my brother's private part. I filed for divorce, walked out without saying a word, and watched my entire world collapse in a single afternoon. I 26M Henry, and I never thought my life would change so suddenly in just a few seconds. For years, I believed my wife, Jessica 24F, was loyal, loving, and someone who would stand by me no matter what. We had built a home together, shared our dreams, and made plans for the future. I trusted her with my whole heart, and I trusted my younger brother Jack 22M just as much. He was my family, my blood, someone I had always tried to protect. I never believed either of them could hurt me in the worst way possible. It was a Saturday afternoon, and everything started out like any normal day. Jessica told me she wanted to stay home and relax. Jack had been living with us for a few weeks because his apartment was being renovated. I was happy to help him. I thought it would be nice for all of us to spend time together as a family. I had no idea what was really happening behind my back. That day, I went out to do some shopping and pick up lunch for Jessica and Jack from Jessica's favorite restaurant. I remember thinking how happy she would be when I walked in with the food. But the moment I opened the front door, something felt strange. The house was too quiet. Not peaceful quiet, but the kind that makes you feel something is wrong. I walked towards the living room, holding the food in my hands, and then I froze. Jessica was standing very close to Jack. Her body was facing him, and her hand was on him in a way that made my heart stop. My mind couldn't understand what my eyes were seeing at first. But then it hit me. My wife was holding my brother's private part. For a few seconds, none of us moved. Jack's face turned red, and Jessica looked like she had just been caught in a crime. My hands started shaking, and my chest felt tight. I wanted to scream at them. I wanted to ask why. I wanted to know how they could do this to me. But I said nothing. I slowly put the food bags down on the table. I looked at both of them one last time, and without saying a word, I turned around and walked out of the house. I could hear Jessica calling my name, but I didn't stop. I didn't even look back. I got into my car and drove away. My hands were still shaking so badly that I could hardly hold the steering wheel. That night, I stayed in a cheap hotel. I sat on the bed, staring at the wall, and the scene kept playing in my mind over and over again. I could see her hand on him. I could see the shock on their faces. I could hear the silence in the room. I barely slept at all. The next morning, I called a lawyer. I told him exactly what had happened and said I wanted a divorce as soon as possible. I didn't want to hear any excuses or apologies from Jessica or Jack. They had already shown me who they were, and I didn't need to hear anything more. By the end of the week, the divorce papers were filed. I didn't go back to the house except to collect my things. I took only what belonged to me and left the rest. I didn't say goodbye to either of them. I didn't give them the chance to talk. It's been months since that day, and while the pain still hits me sometimes, I know walking out without saying a word was the best thing I could have done. They don't deserve to hear my voice or see my tears. They made their choice and I made mine. The divorce will be final soon, and I am ready to close this chapter of my life forever. After leaving the house that day, I remember driving without any clear destination. My mind was in a fog, and the roads felt like they were moving past me without me even noticing. I parked my car at a small gas station on the outskirts of town and just sat there for what felt like hours. I was thinking about how, just that morning, I had woken up beside Jessica, kissed her on the forehead, and told her I loved her before leaving to run my errands. And yet, only a few hours later, I had walked into a scene that tore every piece of that love apart. The image was burned into my mind. Jessica's hand on Jack, his eyes wide like a guilty child who had been caught stealing, and the overwhelming sense that my home, my marriage, and my family were no longer safe places for me. When I finally checked into that cheap hotel, the room felt cold and empty. The air conditioner hummed in the corner, but it didn't drown out my thoughts. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the carpet, wondering how long this had been going on. Was it the first time? Was it happening while I was at work? Had they been laughing together behind my back, thinking I would never find out? I thought about the times Jack and Jessica had seemed a little too friendly. A shared joke here, a long glance there, and how I had ignored it because I trusted them. That trust now felt like a fool's gift, something I had handed over without realizing they were planning to break it. The next day, after speaking to the lawyer, I drove to my parents' house to tell them everything. My mother was shocked, covering her mouth with her hands, while my father's face hardened in a way I had never seen before. He told me that betrayal from family cuts deeper than any other wound because you never expect it to come from your own blood. My mother cried for me, but I could tell she was also crying for Jack, because she couldn't understand how her youngest son could do something so low. My father simply said, "You don't owe either of them another word." That sentence stayed with me. It was the permission I needed to walk away without confrontation. In the days that followed, Jessica tried to call me many times. I never answered. She sent messages saying we needed to talk, that she could explain, that it wasn't what it looked like. But I knew better. It was exactly what it looked like. Jack tried once to send me a message too, but I deleted it without reading. If he had any respect for me left, he would have stayed away completely. They were no longer people I could see as family or partner. They were strangers wearing familiar faces, and I wanted nothing to do with them. When I returned to the house to collect my belongings, I went in the middle of the day while they were both at work. Walking into that living room again made my chest tighten. I could almost see the scene play out in my mind. The same position, the same look of shock, the same crushing silence that had fallen over the room. I packed my clothes, my books, and a few personal items into boxes. I left behind anything that reminded me of the marriage. Wedding photos, gifts, decorations, they could keep it all. I didn't want any physical reminders of the life I had with Jessica. Now, months later, I've learned something about myself. I used to think I needed to confront people to get closure, to demand answers so I could move on. But this time, I realized that closure came from walking away. There was no answer they could give me that would undo what I had seen. There was no apology that could erase the image in my head. And there was no version of the future where I could forgive either of them enough to let them back into my life. When people ask me about that day, I keep my answer simple. I walked in, I saw what I saw, I left without saying a word, and I never looked back. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to remove yourself completely and let the silence be louder than any words you could ever say. My divorce will be finalized soon, and that paper will be the last link between me and Jessica. As for Jack, I have no brother anymore. Blood might make you related, but it doesn't make you family. Respect does, and they lost mine forever.